for joining us. You see a question on the first slide.
Let me go back.
If you'll think about it and drop your answers in the chat as we give people a few more minutes to join the meeting. Are you, so
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to start again.
Thank you, Katie.
Mhm. Here we go. Let's try this again. There we go.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. There's a question on the screen. What would you hope to learn in a community of practice about leading student success? If you would drop your thoughts about that in the chat, I'd appreciate it. We're going to give a few more minutes for people to join that may have trouble with technology. You just never know, do you?
It must be a Monday somewhere. That's what I know.
Always, always, always. Again, thank you for joining us. If you're just joining, please drop your answer to the question on the screen in the chat for us, and we'll come back to that at some point during our presentation. And we may give one more minute. We're going to be mindful of your time today. Okay, guys, I'm not quite sure if that was a full minute, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. So now we'll have that first slide. So I want to welcome you to the Leading Academic Units info session, and this is sponsored by the Gardner Institute. Today, I'm Felita Williams, and I'm a Senior Vice President for Programs here at the Gardner Institute. And I'm going to take you through this info session with some colleagues who will be leading the Institute and some of my colleagues at the Gardner Institute as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about who we are. We're going to have introduction of the facilitators. We're going to talk about why leading an academic units and community, why having this community, and give you some final details about the community and answer any Q&A. So if we're ready, we'll go ahead. So Katie, I think this is yours.
All right. So who is the Gardner Institute? If you're not familiar with us, we are a 25-year-old nonprofit organization, nearly 26. And we are located, our headquarters are in Brevard, North Carolina, though we have a distributed workforce all over the U.S. We work with organizations. We partner with colleges, universities, philanthropic organizations, and educators to improve student outcomes associated with teaching, learning, retention, and completion. And we support post-secondary education's efforts to ensure that every learner earns a credential that leads to a meaningful career and a highly fulfilling life. And who we serve. Felita, are you doing this or am I? I'm sorry.
I think you're going to do it. Thank you.
I'm going to do it. I got it. All right. So over our 25 years, we have worked with over 722 colleges and universities who represent over 5 million students. And you can see here on this graph that we have worked with predominantly 4-year, but a third of our institutions have been 2-year, and most of our institutions have been public. And we have worked with many private institutions and a few nonprofit or for-profit institutions. Excuse me, the outcomes associated with our work are demonstrated here. So over institutions who have worked with us and have self-reported that they have implemented what they have done with us to a high degree, have found great results in terms of retention and graduation rates. And that important return on investment. So for every dollar those institutions spent with the Gardner Institute, their actual enrollment revenue increased based on $26 for every dollar spent. In the Gardner Institute, not only have we been around a long time and worked with a lot of institutions, but we also are researchers and scholars in our own rights. Here are examples of three recent books written by Drew Koch, our CEO, and John Gardner, our founder and board chair, as well as the Transfer Experience book, which was edited by both of them. And now I will pass it back to you, Felita.
Okay, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, you just heard from Ms. Katie Locke, who is the Senior Director of Marketing, Communications, and Engagement at the Gardner Institute. So I have the privilege of introducing the community of practice facilitators. If you join us for leading academic units, you will be joining a community of practice, and these three fellows at the Institute are leading it. First, we have Dr. Scott Newman, who has served as professor, assistant dean, provost, and president, and he's currently professor at Oklahoma State University, Oklahoma City. We have expertise from Dr. Paul Lepore, who has served as faculty, assistant dean for educational programs, and is currently senior associate dean for student and academic programs at Arizona State University. Also, Dr. Suzanne Wilson Summers, who served as faculty, academic dean, AVP of teaching and learning, as well as provost. And currently, we're a little jealous, she's retired now. And I'm Felita Williams. I've served as a faculty member, vice president of advancement external affairs, provost, and retired from the university system as senior vice chancellor for faculty and student success. And again, I'm currently the vice president for programs here at the Gardner Institute. Between us, the four of us, we've got quite a number of years of experience leading academic units in various ways, and we're looking forward to talking with you. I think I hand off to Dr. Lepore.
I think this is me. All right. Well, it's great to have everybody here. Thanks so much for carving time out of your day to learn about the community of practice we're working on. As we really engage one another around where the greatest opportunities lie, we felt like there's a real opportunity to work with academic unit leaders and helping them understand their responsibilities and the opportunities in the area of student success. As Felita mentioned, I'm a former assistant dean, provost, and president, and I hope my legacy stands that I was a major advocate for student success in all of those different roles. But when I was a provost and president, as much as I worked to advance student success, I still, at the end of the day, had to rely on our academic unit leaders really to operationalize and to oversee that important work. And we all know that the academic unit level is where the work of our institutions, our community colleges, our regional universities, our research universities happen. And so it's critical that the academic leaders, academic unit leaders are the ones who are able to have the capacity and are able to lead those efforts. So when we talked about who should be the focus of this particular community practice, we really focused on those who are leading those initiatives, those who lead faculty, those who are involved with academic staff and advancing those sorts of initiatives. So obviously deans, department heads, school heads, program leaders, division chairs, anyone who really fills in that space, who is set in a unique position to advance that work is who this particular community of practice is focused on. In terms of the outcomes that we're hoping for the participants in the community of practice to gain through this, can we go to the next slide, Katie? So we're looking to ensure there's alignment between and across institutional and unit goals and the priorities to ensure that everyone's pulling on the same rope at the same time in the same direction. We want participants to utilize data to better understand the barriers that students in their units are encountering. We want them to be able to utilize those data and other information, such as faculty and staff insights, which many already exist if you're not already tapping into those, about the unique strategies or the sets of strategies that are needed to address the barriers that your particular students are encountering. These are not just a general set, but we want you to bring your specific situations to the community of practice meeting so we can talk about how best to serve your students in ways that are unique to them. We want our academic unit leaders to be able to identify the opportunities that they as leaders within their different contexts have to advance the teams and units that you oversee in the direction of engaging in this important work. We want our participants to be able to utilize one or more strategies to implement the different student success initiatives that you've identified that you wish to undertake. And then, of course, we're always thinking about how do we plan to ensure continuous positive advancement of the different student success initiatives, utilizing data and through ongoing engagement of our different unit stakeholders. Let's see, I believe I pass it to Paul.
You do. So thanks, Scott. Thanks for teeing up kind of the big picture of what we're looking to accomplish. As Felita mentioned, my name is Paul Lepore, and I'm the Senior Associate Dean in our Arts and Science College here at Arizona State University. Prior to this, I was at the University of Washington in the College of Arts and Sciences there. And I think like many of the folks drawn to this conversation, my role, middle management as an adjunct enhanced dean, is to affect institutional change to the betterment of our students. And that was something that none of us get trained on in graduate school, and trying to figure out how we can implement change to bring, and I think I love Scott's comment in the chat, how to manage faculty and staff who might be highly resistant to change. Wonderful insight. Will be some of the questions that we're going to take up. I've been working with the Gardner Institute since 2015. We led a self-study on the first year experience. The following year, we liked it so much, we did it on the transfer student experience. And what I came away from that was a number of really wonderful ideas that we implemented to the betterment of our students, but also a process by which we could think about how can we make sure that the change that we're seeking is something that we can not only get buy-in, but also can be sustained over the long term. And so our community of practice is going to give you those concrete tools. We start on session 1, which will be in October in Chicago, in a little bit more than 6 weeks, or maybe a little bit less than 6 weeks, where we're going to give an overview on the frameworks that we're going to be using. And then each meeting thereafter for the next 7 meetings, which will take place in the fall and the spring, we're going to be able to give you kind of the mindset as well as the toolkit to be able to assess what's going on at your institution, to think about how data can be leveraged, not only to help you understand what the problems are, but to bring your colleagues along. We're going to talk about the cultural changes that might be necessary either in your department or your college at your university, to be able to actually make sure everyone, as Scott mentioned, is rowing in the same direction and making student success a unit priority. Building the coalition, actually having those conversations, kind of the brass tacks about educational reform will be things we'll be discussing. Many of you have identified some of the things you want to work on. And one thing about student success, it is a myriad, it's many dimensions of how we can affect the student experience. And we're going to not only share with you, but to give you some insights into strategies that we know are best practices that work and that you might want to pursue. Complex change needs management, and the management skills that we're all looking to develop will be a central piece of this community of practice. And as I mentioned, looking at the long term is grounding our work so that the efforts aren't just simply, the latest and greatest new thing that comes from on high, but it's something that people can get behind and buy into. Next slide. Thank you, Katie. So I touched on what Scott mentioned in the chat. Here are some other ones. Lua mentioned best practices to increase student retention and graduation rates. These are the high valued numbers that we all look to every fall to make sure that our at least our numbers are going up and not going down. But behind those are a complex web of efforts that you are aware of, and hopefully we're going to be able to help you structure so that what makes sense at your institution is what you're working on during the whole year. So Lua, if retention and graduation rates among the students in your school or your college is top of mind, we will be helping you kind of walk through the pathway to be able to think about how you can develop reform efforts that will be focused on that. Jamie mentions the fact that looking at different audiences and different groups of students is an important piece. So supporting working students. Again, thinking about how our practices may differentially impact students based upon the constraints or opportunities they might have. We mentioned Scott's earlier, and the last one, Giancarlo, I'm hoping to identify best practices for leading academic units in the effective management of students, especially in the areas like credit for prior learning and academic advising, two very central pieces of the student success puzzle. How do we actually look at our policies and practices? We have half of our students here at ASU are transfer students, and thinking about, are we a transfer-friendly institution and could we do better at that? I have 70 academic advisors in my college that really are the linchpin in our student success initiatives, and thinking about effective ways to structure and think about academic advising might be exactly what your institution is looking to implement, and we'll be able to help you with that. That's it for me.
Thank you. All right, well, who should participate? I love Paul's term, adjective enhanced. As you can see, we started out thinking we were going to focus on chairs and deans, but as we got talking, it became clear that there are many both levels of leadership positions who might benefit from this. Some of them, and sometimes more informal roles as well. So for example, you might be a director of a Center for Teaching and Learning, and you would certainly, be welcome. You undoubtedly are going to be playing a really key role in your institution's student success work. Also, potentially faculty who are leading major student success initiatives within their academic unit. So we have thought about this broadly, and again, as I think Paul and Scott have said, sort of the central organizing theme was, are you leading faculty in some of these student success initiatives within your programs? Next slide, please. So let me just talk a little bit about the structure of the community. In late October, I think the first couple of days in November, the Gardner Institute is holding its annual symposium in Chicago. The three of us will be doing an in-person kickoff session from 1 to 4. And so that would really be sort of our first meeting, and then that'll be followed by 7 monthly virtual sessions that'll run from December through June of 26. It's 1 day a week, 1 day a month. It's one Wednesday. We will be meeting from 3 to 4:30 Eastern on Zoom. And we'll have a learning, an LMS. We will have some pre-read material. We will have additional supplemental material that you have access to, because we really want you to be able to help build up your own sort of leadership library and take some of those resources back to your institutions with you. And I think I'm passing this back to Paul.
I think it's me. Unless Paul wants to cover this.
Nope, this is totally a marketing person's
It's almost
strong
as if it was my job.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what is the fee and how does one enroll? So the fee is $4,445 per individual. That can be split into 2 fiscal years if that helps make it easier for you to participate. There is a registration form on our website. We will make sure that you have a link to that. We will be sending a little information in advance with some questions to help our fabulous facilitators here make sure that they're catering the learning to the group. We have your fee does include that pre-conference workshop as well as your registration for the symposium, and you would be responsible for your personal travel to Chicago and your lodging there. So we have secured a really great rate at the hotel there. So we tried to make it as least expensive as possible, and it's really going to be a great symposium, a great conference. So we think you'll really enjoy it. I will say this, the conference has 7 really interesting workshop tracks. So it's part workshop and part conference. So you'll spend half your time doing a deep dive into one of those 7 tracks. And then we have a really amazing wide variety of concurrent sessions also available. And I think this is back to you, Felita.
Okay, thank you. So I put a little note in the chat that said, feel free to drop your questions in. But are there any questions you might have about joining us? If there's something holding you back, talk to us about it. Let's see if we can help you work it out. And if there are additional things you want to learn after you've heard what others have said, we'd love to have that in the chat as well. And while you're doing that, I want to acknowledge one more coworker that works behind the scenes, Ms. Brittany Connor, who's Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications. And lots of times you have those people in the background that are never seen and never heard, but work wouldn't happen without them. So thank you, Brittany.
Absolutely. I see the first question in the chat is which hotel is this being held at? The symposium is being held at the Sheraton Grand Riverwalk. And there's Brittany, always on it. So yes, Sheraton Grand Chicago Riverwalk, so right in downtown Chicago. It's a great location.
Any questions or confusions about whether or not you're eligible to participate, given your titles or your colleagues' titles? And I will say, if you have a fellow dean or department chair member, it's great if you can come as a team, because it just gives you that community at home to continue some of the new techniques that you will learn, or the way we sharpen your current talents and skills.
And we do have a discount for teams of 4 or more.
You weren't here the last time I gave the wrong discount, but Brittany got me straight quickly. So thank you. So yes, we do have a discount. And I think that, and being able to pay it over the 2 semesters or 2 fiscal years is great. It's very good. Thank you.
And I do want to say, if we have anyone, I'm not sure that we do, who are currently or joining our transformation process, there is up to 2 registrations from transformation schools from our first cohort who are eligible to participate. And if you fit that bill and you don't have the information on the codes, just reach out to info@gardnerinstitute.org and we'll get you sorted.
All right. I don't see any additional questions.
Would you like me to stop the recording and then we can answer any questions anybody may want to ask not on record?
That's a great idea.
Okay, let me do this. And we'll do that.